So it is part 2 of lesson 9. We've done a little bit of debugging. Pardon me, we've changed. Kudos to Cameron. We changed our capital S to lowercase s when saving the new user. That seems to fix it. So now we've got working GitHub auth. It worked for you with the capital. Interesting. Okay, I'll just log back in with GitHub. So now what we want to do is we want to look at including related data. Now there's a few ways of doing this. We looked at this before. There was a link up on Blackboard, I think way back in lesson 5. Look at it, where we looked at some of the options when you've got related data in MongoDB. At least I thought I had posted it here. Here, structuring related data in MongoDB. It was in lesson 6. So it's really simple. When we're working with a relational database, we've got related data. Well, we just figure out, usually it's a parent-child. We've got one to many. So we set up a foreign key. We add a relationship, and there we go. It's not as clear, though, with a NoSQL database. So the basics, the most common is a one-to-few version. So this is the structure we're going to use. So one artist, we want to add albums. One artist can have many albums, but realistically, even the most prolific artist is not going to have more than, let's say, a few dozen albums. So we could create a separate albums collection, a separate albums model, and we could relate them kind of this way. Here, this one to squid. So we could store like our artist ID inside of each album as similar to a foreign key. But because we're not going to have that many child records, we're going to use this structure where inside of our artists, we just want to list the albums as a nested array. That's going to be a little more efficient. That way, when we select an artist, we can automatically get all of their albums. We don't have to do like a join and query into another collection. So we're going to use this structure. That's going to involve a little change in our artist model. So let's open up the artist model. So again, we're not going to bother creating a separate albums schema. We don't need to. But after our name property, which right now that's all we've got for artists, we're going to add in an albums property that's an array. And then we can define what does an album look like. So the album array will have its own set of properties. Now we can set out 3. We'll set out an album title, which will be a string, a year, which will be a number, and maybe a rating, which will also be a number. And because we're enclosing this in square brackets, Mongoose knows this is going to be a nested array. One artist isn't just going to have a single album, but it can potentially have many. So modify your artist model to now include the albums property, and then within albums, we've got title, year, and rating properties. We're then going to modify our edit artist form. We can modify the artist name at the top, but we're going to now then create a form underneath where we can add it and then later view the albums within that one page. So when I go to edit an artist, I'm going to have another form below here to add an album. So we're going to embed multiple forms on the same page. So let's go to our views, artists. Let's go to edit. Got a simple form here. We'll add a section tag here. We'll say with a heading, it's an H2 instead of an H1. It says add an album. We'll create a form with a method of post. And our action is going to be artists / add album. And then we're going to append on the artist ID into the URL. So when we submit the form, the URL that's going to process it will be artist, add album, and then we'll also have the artist ID. So we know which artist created this album. So we can nest this album inside of that artist document. Think for simplicity, so we're going to have 3 inputs. I'm just going to copy this field set 3 times, and then we'll change it. So 1, 2, 3. And we're going to change the properties and text. So our first label and input will be for title. So you're going to change those instances. And my label where it says name, I'm going to change that to say title. I'm going to take out the value. There is no value because we want all of these text boxes to be empty. My second label will be for year. The label will say year. Our second input, the name and ID will be year. Again, we're going to take out the value, but we're going to say type equals number. And we'll say maybe minimum, I don't know, no albums before whatever, I don't know, the year 1500. And then we want our last input, our last field set to be for ratings, and we're just going to allow values 1 to 5. So again, I'll change the name, I'll change the ID and the label 4 to rating. I'll put the text on the label 5-star rating so users know it's only from 1 to 5. They won't try and rank something out of 10 or out of 100. Again, I'll take out the value. We'll say type equals number, min is 1, and max is 5. So we'll use HTML5 to kind of validate. So change all the 4 properties, change the name and ID properties, change the text on your labels. We're getting rid of the value attributes here. And we're making our second and third text boxes numeric. And then we can just copy our save button here. So after my last field set, we'll add our save button. So we have 2 separate forms. They will post to separate URLs. They each have their own save button. So I'm going to go have a look at my form. So I'm going to log in with GitHub. I'll go to edit. So now here's what we've got. We can modify the artist name if we need to. But now I've got a text box for title, a year that can't go below 1500, 5-star rating. No more than 5 here. I could even set max length properties here. So our year is no more than 4 characters, our 5-star rating, maybe no more than 1 character. I could add that. Wanted. So max length on the year will be 4. Max length on the rating will be 1. So now in our artist controller, we need to create a post handler for the URL, for this URL, /artist/add-album with an ID parameter on the end. And this will allow us to find the existing artist and add an element to the albums array and save it to the DB. So I'm going to go into my artist controller and we will set up a post handler at artist/add-album/ABC123. New album, new existing artist document. In nested albums array. So we'll use router.post. It's going to be under add-album. And then we're going to put in a :_ID. So the colon represents our parameter, same way we've done before when editing or deleting. This method is private, so we need to call our auth check first. If you're not logged in, you can't post a new album. And then our callback, our request response. Here. So we're going to use the ID parameter first to go and grab the artist. So get selected artist. We use our artist model. We'll call find by ID. With our request.params._ID. And then our callback, we're going to look up this artist. We're either going to get an error or we will get back an artist document. If we have an error, we'll send it out. Otherwise, we'll take the artist document that comes back. We'll refer to the albums, that nested array, and we can push. So the title will be equal to our request.body.title. And we can populate the year and the rating in the same way. So request.body, this is looking for form inputs. So we're then going to call artist.save. Again, if we get an error, we'll send the error back. We'll return the error. Otherwise, we're going to redirect back to artists/edit. And we are going to append on the request.params._id. So we'll reload the same page, basically. We're going to redirect back to the edit page, reload the same artist. Because when we're done, we're also going to need to display, when editing an artist, we also want to see the album list. So right now, if we try this, if it works, we should see the new album in MongoDB, but our page is just going to reload and the form's going to clear out. So we'll have to add that piece of displaying the albums on the edit page. We'll do that after. First, we just want to see if we can actually use this albums.push and artist.save to actually save a new album. We're going to try that first. So I'm going to have to get back in again. I'm going to have to log in each time in order to do this. I'll go to edit. I'll pick an artist. I'm going to try to save an album. Okay, so it brought me back here, which is good. My artist details are still here. Notice my form's been cleared out. So did this actually save anything? Well, we'll look in MongoDB. We'll go back to my collections. If I look under the artist collection, notice here under Pearl Jam now, I've got an albums. And in here, there's an object. And now it gets its own unique ID. And now I've got my album here. Let me try and add another one. Right. So I'll add 10, 1991, save. My page refreshes. And if I refresh in MongoDB, I've now got both of my albums listed in the array. So we've got child data, but it doesn't live separately in a different collection. It's nested right inside our Pearl Jam document. Again, here's our post method. So our form and our post method are working correctly. We're creating a new album, we're pushing it to the database, and we're reloading our page. So we have one more piece of functionality to add here, which is when we're looking at an artist, yeah, we've got a form for adding an album, but right now there's no way, you can't see them anywhere in the web application, right? These albums, they're only here because I can connect into the back end of my database. This is very helpful for users. So when we're editing an artist, we also want to see the albums listed here. So we need to modify the view and also make, Actually, I don't think we have to change anything in the controller method, which is kind of neat. And if we look at our edit get method, it already selects the artist by ID and passes the entire artist object to the view. So we actually don't need to change the controller at all. This artist object, it's already going to contain the albums. So we can just add a little section onto our edit form, our edit page underneath. So I'll just put on a heading here. It says discography. And we can just use a loop to iterate through the albums property. In fact, so we'll put on a table. And I'll use my favorite Bootstrap table classes. Put on a table heading. So we'll put on 3 headings: title, year, and rating. So there's our header. And then after the header, we can use a loop to display each album in a new row. So for each of our artist.albums, we're going to create a new row and a new column. And we can just use the this keyword because it refers to the albums we're looping through. So this.title, this.year, and this.rating. So I'll check this out, but now this should show, if I go and look at Pearl Jam, it should show me the albums that I've already added into MongoDB. Now we maybe don't even want to show this section. We'll add that later. If the artist has no albums, we won't even show that section. We'll just try it out. So now when I go to edit Pearl Jam, and I can see their albums. If I add another one, my page should reload and it should get added automatically down at the bottom. So as soon as I hit save, my browser just kind of flickers for a minute, but now it's added my album down here. It's cleared out my form so I could add another one. If we go and look at an artist with no albums, we might want to hide this section. There's no point showing these headings, this heading and these table headers, if there's no albums here. So we can just add a little logic. We're almost done. I'm going to wrap this whole section. I can just close it up and indent it. We'll just wrap this in a little if statement. So $if artist.albums. So if the artist has any albums, then I'm just going to move that album section inside. So we're not going to show the discography section heading and our table. with our headings, I'm not going to show this unless there are some albums, at least one album. So let's look at the results. So now if I look at almost any other artist, right, I don't even see it. As soon as I add something, not sure if that's the right year, but I'll put in, as soon as I save, my page is going to reload and my discography title and my table should show up. I'm just kind of making this up. It's much older. I don't know. So now we can work with that related data. If we want, I mean, we could have had a entirely separate albums section, but I think it makes sense when we're looking at an artist, we can just include the album data right here. If we wanted to put it, if the data was more complex, we could certainly use a different set of views entirely and break it out. But I think for our purposes, it works to show both the parent and child data in the same view. We could even put this in a collapsible panel, use a bit of jQuery so that we could show or hide our add album form if we wanted to. So some of you may have some use for this in your assignment, depending on what you're building. You may have some related data. I'm just reading Chris's question. Okay, that's a really good question. So yeah, what if, right now this is just a general library, so anybody who logs in sees the same things. So Chris is saying, what if we wanted to tie things to a user? In that case, what we would need, first of all, is in the artist model, you would need the user ID. So every time you added an artist, you would have to include it as, tie it to a user profile. So maybe Chris, you and I could both add the same artist, but they would be in here, one attached to your profile and a separate record unrelated attached to mine. So you need a user ID property here. And then in the artist controller, in your post handler for create, right, we would need to set the user ID of that artist record equal to the request.user ID. So that would allow you to tie data to a particular user. Okay, so then when we looked in the database, each document would actually have a user ID as well. And some of you may need that functionality to build the assignments that you're planning to build. Chris, does that help answer your question? Yeah, it shouldn't be very difficult. You just need a user ID property in your model and make sure you grab that user ID whenever you're saving a new document. And then you could do a filter. So on a page like this one, where you're viewing the data, like we've got here, instead of calling find, right, you'd still call find, but you'd need to provide a JSON object as a where clause. So you would be filtering for the selected user ID. So that way each user would only see their own records and they wouldn't be able to see records that belong to other users. So you'd need a kind of a where in here when you're calling find. You need to filter it. Excellent question. Okay, I will push everything up to GitHub. Oops. That worked well. Don't know what is in there. got nested album data, create and read. Okay, so all the changes we've made today are up on GitHub. They are available for you. And the GitHub auth is going to help you if you are adding a third-party sign-in to your assignment. Okay, now to what you need to do, a couple things you need to do for next week. Number one, there is a quiz, which you will find in the lesson 10 folder. I'll open up the quiz now. I think I had made it so that it wasn't due to open until after class today, but I will change the open it now. You have until next Tuesday at 5 p.m. to do it, which is lots of time. And the quiz is basically focusing on authentication with Passport. And using different Passport strategies like Passport Local and Passport GitHub. So you have a week, mostly short answers to do that quiz for a few percent. We've also got a lab. So I'm going to go over the lab. The lab is simple, easy marks. Let me go over the requirements. So what I want you to do is with someone else in the class, and you can choose. If you need a partner, let me know, and I will assign a partner to you. Here's what you're going to do. So find a partner or ask me for a partner, and I will give you one. Actually, you know what? Maybe. Okay. So you have until Friday, the end of the week, to do the lab. You don't have all week to do this. What you're going to do, so let's say, let's just say Adam and Booger want to work together. Okay, I'm just looking alphabetically at who's in class. So what you will do is send each other your assignment 2 file, your project plan. You're going to send it to your partner, send them your plan. And you're going to provide feedback on your partner's plan. It's good always to have, before we build something, good to get some insight from somebody else. And you need to simply answer 3 questions. Okay, what do you like? Tell your partner what you like about the app they want to build for assignment 3. Do you have any suggestions? So what suggestions do you have that might make it better? And then any other comments? Okay, so just give some constructive, respectful feedback about your partner's plan. To submit, you will email the document back to your partner with your feedback and also submit it on Blackboard. So the lab is worth, these are pretty easy marks. We'll just look at can't remember what the lab is actually worth. Pretty easy marks, and it's also a chance for you to get, yeah, thanks, Fatima. So easy 5%. And it's a chance for you to help out a classmate, as well as get some feedback from a classmate on your own assignment, your own plan for assignment 3, which is due in 3 weeks, end of the month, November 30th. Okay. So some of you have friends in the class, feel free to connect with a friend. As I said, if you need a partner and you don't know how to reach out to someone, or if you're doing the lesson asynchronously and you don't know how to connect with anybody in class, please email me and I will connect you with someone else in the class. This is due on Friday, not next Tuesday, because I want you to have more time to incorporate your partner's feedback as you build assignment 3. Okay, so please pay attention to the checklist. So by next Tuesday, you're submitting lab 2 by this Friday at 5 o'clock, end of the week. You have until next Tuesday to do the quiz. So you have 2 things due next week, before next week. 1 on Friday, 1 on Tuesday. Please let me know if you need a partner. Okay, it's an easy 5% and a chance to make your assignment 3 better. So everybody should be doing this lab. I don't want to see anybody lose that 5%. Okay. Are there any questions about either the lab or the quiz before we break for today? Okay. As I said, please let me know if you need a partner, and I will find you a partner. Okay, so there's one person. Is there anybody else in the class who needs a partner? Okay, Yuli, you and Shalu. If you guys maybe just want to put your email addresses in the chat. Okay, Bugra, you and Simon can work together. So you can message each other. Okay, is there anyone else who needs a partner? Okay, Adam, how about you and Jillian? I'll just stop the recording.